what's up, you guys? Welcome back to the Hot Chai Pod, a podcast where we serve up that masala Bollywood tea. I'm your host, Jazz, and what a week of chai we have on the docket, and a lot of new listeners and followers, so welcome to the chaos, welcome to the crazy, okay? We usually kick things off with maybe some personal happenings, we get into box office, then we go through some of the, rumblings, casting, gossip, rumors, etc. And sometimes I will finish with Teacup Time, whether that's dating advice questions, reading your guys' comments, going through some of the Instagram polls that were interesting, or doing like a movie or show recap. Which reminds me, you guys, I did do a recap of the first 4 episodes of Call Me Bae, which is a Ananya Pandey's show on Prime. So check that out if you want. It's audio only. I didn't have the time to do a full video, but I should be dropping part 2, so episodes 5 through 8, I think on Saturday. So if you're watching, take a listen. I have some thoughts on it. I do a little recap of what is going on in the episode, and I'm actually having a lot of fun with that show. So it just got renewed for season 2. And yeah, a lot to discuss about Ananya and her acting journey, because I know that is very controversial. So actually, I just watched Kabhi Kabhie on Prime. I know, old AF. And it was my first time watching it as an adult, though. So very different experience than watching it when I was like 10 years old. I actually have a lot of thoughts on the film and how it's aged, putting it into modern context. And so that is going to be at the end of this episode. So, feel free to stay until then. And yes, you guys, I really went from Call Me Bae to Kabhi Kabhie in the matter of seconds. I know, it's what a world we're living in, but hey, I can appreciate everything. So it's been a very fashion and beauty heavy week with Milan and Paris Fashion Weeks, right? So a bunch of our Bollywood girls flew on in and have been walking in shows or in attendance and being photographed and, just bringing a lot of clout for the brands. And so I would be remiss not to start with our very own Aishwarya Rai and Alia Bhatt in the L'Oreal Paris fashion show. And I will say, all eyes were a little bit on Alia this time, not because we weren't excited to see Ash. I think it was more so that, Ali has just been announced as their global ambassador. We all wanted to kind of see how that was going to play out. And we all just know, okay, Ash is just going to look gorgeous and she's going to kill it. End of story. And personally, I wasn't so sure how Alia would do, just because some of her past runway looks or, showstopper moments have not always, hit the mark. But I got to say, this time she killed it. She came in and she killed it. She walked well, she was in some super high heels, and whoever finally did her makeup well, these L'Oreal artists, maybe they knew what they were doing, okay? Because they smoked out her eyes a little, they sculpted her up with some bronzer. I think her signature look, which is like no eyeliner, no lipstick, just keeping the face very plain.
We used to go out at night, he's like, wipe that off, because he loves the natural.
I don't really think it does much for her. I think this was very fresh. I think that's why everyone's like, wow, why does she look so beautiful? Well, because you got to play up your features. I'm not the best at doing my own makeup, but I know what looks good. And she looked good. She looked really young and fresh and glamorous. And I think that's important, give us the drama, girl. And speaking of drama, she wore this metal Gaurav Gupta corset. And then I think these flared jumpsuit, almost bell-bottomy pants. I don't know if they were pants or a jumpsuit. Looked good. She looked young. She looked fresh. She walked happily. She blew some kisses and good. Walking in Ash's footsteps. So speaking of walking in Aishwarya's footsteps, Aishwarya did come down. She came to Paris with Aaradhya. More on that in a second. And she walked the runway as well. And her makeup looked amazing. She had her red lippy. Her hair was nice and big. But they put her in this kind of, very voluminous red gown. And it had a cape. And it was very dramatic. But I think it was a little too bulky. And I know she likes to dress conservatively. So it's not really a knock on that so much as I think she couldn't put her hand on her hip and walk. You know what I mean? I think she couldn't move her arms freely down the side of her and sashay. She has a good runway walk. She's been modeling for like, how long has it been now? Like 35 years or something crazy. So it kind of sucked. She had to kind of walk a little slowly. I think she was worried about tripping over the hem of the dress. So, obviously she looked gorgeous. The face card does not decline. Okay. Just, it never goes away. I don't care how old you are. And I do think, some of these comparisons where people are like, Alia versus Ash, and I choose Alia and I choose Ash. And it's like, we don't have to choose one. One of you guys actually commented on yesterday's Instagram post, and it was so apt because they said comparing Alia to Aishwarya is like comparing Sydney Sweeney to Monica Bellucci. And I would throw like Angelina Jolie in there. Sydney Sweeney, she's beautiful, she's talented in her own right, but you're not going to match the iconic status of a Monica Bellucci, of an Angelina Jolie, of these like legendary beauties who are known mostly for their beauty. And I think it is apples to oranges, and I think we can appreciate both. I know I'm guilty of it. Look at me. I'm lecturing everybody. I'm guilty of it. I did it last week where I was like, it feels like a tad disappointing. Like you have the superstar Aishwarya, but now it's a new era, and like there is no new Aishwarya, of course. And yeah, I think it is just a matter of changing with the times and accepting, that there's different faces and different people bring different things, especially in a world of, beauty inclusivity and being, positive and wanting representation. And I will say a lot of people are enjoying kind of this, having this like girl next door represent them as an ambassador of Indian beauty. So I can appreciate that and I can understand that. This L'Oreal Paris fashion show. Last year we had Navya Nanda walking. Okay, Aishwarya's niece, Abhishek's niece, right? Like that to me was a traumatic thing. It was like, it was bad. It was so bad. And then I also saw a post, I think this morning, of Navya only congratulated Alia on the show and she didn't congratulate Ash. Nobody, I can't even believe people are reporting on it. I can't believe I'm reporting. Nobody, Navya Nanda, no one cares about what she thinks or who she's approving of or her jealousies or, those toxic family dynamics. I think that does kind of speak to the dynamics of it all, right? I have to note again that Aishwarya only brought Aaradhya to this event. Of course, no Abhishek. And I saw pictures of her wearing the Vanki ring. It's this like V-shaped ring. And some people are saying she only started wearing that after she got married. Other people are saying that she's worn that since her modeling days or since her first movie. I think it is a symbol that she's married, but then again, she didn't wear it when she was out in Dubai. And we spoke about that a little bit last week. And I think maybe she may have put it on to just kind of try to shut people up or try to get people to stop talking about her being divorced, or like maybe that's her not wanting it to be so obvious to the press or to Aaradhya, or just as like a sign of respect to the Bachchan family, or who knows. I don't think they're reconciling. I think he would have been there. And, to that point, Ranbir Kapoor showed up in Paris and he was there to support Alia for her show. And actually Neetu Kapoor also came. So, nice to see the whole family. And people like to point out that Aishwarya has never had that support. And I would disagree with that because the Bachchans used to come and support her at different events, Pink Panther premiered and stuff like that. And then things started to go downhill. And we've speculated on what those factors have been. Go back to previous episodes if you haven't caught up. I also think the nature of these events have changed. So like I was saying, if somebody like Navya Nanda can walk in this show, and what I also saw, for any of you who know Real Housewives, Bethenny Frankel walked the show. I thought she did like a green screen. I thought it was like an AI video. My mom thought it was like not real either. And then I saw it's very real. If you don't know who this is, Bethenny Frankel, she's a former cast member of the Real Housewives of New York City, the old version. So it's been many, many years. Now she hosts a podcast and she does a lot of like influencing. So she'll do makeup and skincare and like food and luggage and like she does everything. And like she gives her like non-expert opinion on everything. And I say non-expert because for her skincare reviews, she'll put on like a dab of moisturizer and she'll be like, this is the best moisturizer. It feels amazing. You have to buy this. And it's like, can we get a wear test? Can you tell me if this actually hydrated your skin like in a week? But anyways, those are my own complaints. And you know what? I'm very addicted to watching her videos because sometimes she's chewing with her mouth open. She's talking while she's eating. It's just horrible. She eats the most horrible food and yet somehow I can't look away. And like sometimes I just watch them because They're so annoying. And hey, maybe that's why you guys watch some of my videos too. So can't complain. But seeing someone like Bethenny Frankel walk the ramp, I think it does bring down the vibe a little bit of these shows. And I understand why brands do this, right? And it's an interesting marketing dilemma, I think, because on one hand, someone like Bethenny Frankel has millions of followers, right? Or even like a Suhana Khan has millions of followers. And so these brands can market their product to this wide stretch of people who maybe otherwise wouldn't have thought to buy L'Oreal mascara or something like that, right? And so they can reach as many people as possible through these influencers. But on the other hand, there is something to be said about brand dilution, right? And like when you used to have big stars, or it used to feel more aspirational that it's only stars and models and like stunning people walking the ramp, then you feel like, oh, it's almost like unattainable. And like, I want to be like that. How do I be like that? When I see someone like Bethenny Frankel walking down the runway, I'm like, well, I don't really want to be like that. For me, it doesn't stir up the same kind of like, ooh, excitement, like I have to have this. But that's just me. I'm sure these strategy teams know what they're doing. I have been posting a couple of instances and polls on the Hot Chai Pod about the whole bot situation on social media. So speaking of influencing and reach and whatever, like the obvious bot farming, you can see when you go on any of these big pages, like all of the comments are spam, or you see these like smaller accounts and they keep reposting clips of all of their favorite actresses or actors. And you're kind of like, this is weird. Like how many like fan pages are there that have like no real followers or not following anyone and are devoted to one celebrity? So it's a kind of strange. It's kind of obvious. I think it's a way to get everything circulating. For some of these posts, you might think the comments are organic or belonging to real people. And no. Okay? Because, and it's not a conspiracy. This is not a conspiracy. I know I have a lot of theories, but this is not a conspiracy because last week I saw two instances of this. One, Tripti Dimri has this new music video that released. It was not amazing. I'll put that out there. But then I saw two different accounts with no followers comment word for word the exact thing on this post. And I was like, there's something like inherently suspicious about it. And it was something strange. I'll try to put it up in this video so you can see what I'm talking about. It's like a weird comment and it's like, what does this mean? And I've noticed that trend that there's been all these very hateful comments about Tripti Dimri. And I've mentioned this in a past episode too. And it's like, what happened? She was the national crush. She blew up. She signed all these films and suddenly everyone hates her. I don't buy it. It doesn't make any sense to me. And then when it started to click with me, especially this week, that it was kind of bot work, I'm like, okay, so there is an element of like, these are not real people hating so much because it doesn't make sense. And on the other end, these are not real people loving and fangirling or fanboying so much. I had noticed this on a post that someone had written out Alia Bhatt, superstar icon or something. I'll post this as well. But that comment was written in quotes. And I'm like, oh, okay. So you received these types of comments and just decided to post them without taking out the quotation marks or something like that. And I think it's fairly obvious. And I do notice this. The biggest offender of all this work is Alia herself. Of course, she has very real fans and real engagement. But then it is to the point where people who are like, I'm not a fan of her at all, and yet I am force fed all this content and these clips and all these like bot accounts reposting her stuff. And I'll say the same for me, but for me it is different because I am a fan and I do talk about all of this. So it makes sense that it shows up in my algorithm, right? But I do encourage you all to just kind of take a more careful eye when you are reading comment threads or you're seeing all these likes or you keep seeing the same post from any creator, Hollywood or Bollywood or whatever, or even influencers, and you keep seeing their face pop up on your For You page, you should think about whether that is organic or if it's bots. There were other celebs at the Milan and Paris Fashion Weeks, including Tamannah Bhatia, Rashmika Mandanna, who did both Onitsuka Tiger and Versace. Okay. And she probably had the most iconic moment because she got a picture with Donatella Versace, but Donatella posted it on her wall. I was like, that's pretty major. Like, I felt like that was like a knighting in the fashion industry. Like, Donatella reposted you to her wall? You got it, girl, then. All right, well, obviously, she liked what she saw. I also saw Kriti Sanon at Burberry. She served up a few looks. And then I saw Mouni Roy at Erdem. And she has kind of been a little bit of an ambassador for them because she's been decked out in Erdem and going to the show. I will say, we sent our baddies over there, okay? Everyone looked pretty amazing. Even Tamannah Bhatia, I didn't super love her outfit. It was like a little cat womany, a little too animal inspired for me, but she looked hot. And you guys did ask, how come Alia Bhatt was not there for Gucci's show, and I wonder if maybe it just kind of was hard to manage between kind of the Jigra promotions, Alpha shooting, and then knowing she'd have to be in Paris for the L'Oreal stuff. So maybe it just wasn't working like that, but it kind of was like a missed opportunity. I think it would have been cool to see her there. So switching gears, let's talk a little box office. So Yudhra came out. It's a movie. It's an action movie. It has Siddhant Chautervedi and Malavika Mohanan in it. It's Siddhant Chautervedi's like first lead film role, and it's doing kind of average at the box office. So it started a little strong, but I guess it's not necessarily hitting the mark, and the reviews are kind of in the middle. I'm seeing a lot of 2.5, 3-star reviews for the film. Seems like maybe, the second half or the ending are a little anticlimactic or move a little slow, or maybe it's a little predictable. I don't know. You guys know I don't like to read any spoilers. Unfortunately, this movie is not playing near me, so I won't get to watch it until it hits streaming. But I think the good news coming out of it, though, is that Siddhant Chautervedi is getting a lot of praise for his acting chops. People said that he did the action role well and he did the romance part of the movie well. So that's good to hear. We love a little bit of fresh talent here. Also, the actor Raghav Juyal is in the film. And if you remember, he got a little bit of like a cult boost after his role in Kill with Lakshay. Why is Amazon Prime charging me to watch Kill? And it's like $6 or something, and like it's extra. Like, I'm annoyed, but you know what? It's fine. It's fine. I'm gonna probably bite the bullet and watch it because it has been on my list for a while. But I digress. Also, I forgot to mention Siddhant Chautervedi has a film coming up with Tripti Dimri, and I guess it's a sequel to Dadak, so Dadak 2. So we'll be keeping an eye out for that and when it's hitting the floors. Speaking of Tripti Dimri, so we just mentioned, I know we've been talking about her a little bit in this episode, but I recently saw that she did an interview or something, and she mentioned that her relatives had said, if you become an actress, nobody's going to want to marry you. And to that I say, jealous, okay? I have a lot more words, but that's the main one. You just know, okay? In her family, she's always been like the star. She's always been like the beautiful girl in the family. And then suddenly she starts getting acting roles, and everybody's even more jealous than they were before. And they're like, oh, well, nobody's going to want you because now you're not a decent girl. I just think the rest of the family couldn't stand it. Hate to say it. I think that's what happened. And so they threw that out there to make themselves feel better and to try to put her down. I'm like, what are you talking about? Actresses can't get married. Look at Juhi Chalwa, look at Madhuri Dixit. I talk about marrying well. I would actually say like you have better options because you don't have to get married. Like economically, you don't. You have a lot more choices in your life. And I guess on the other end of the spectrum is like the actresses who do marry within the film fraternity. I would say it's a little bit more of a mixed bag, the success rate or like how happy they are if it was like a good choice for them. But that could be said about literally any marriage, love, arranged, whatever it is. It's a mixed bag, okay? And you know what? It's better she's up on the big screen. She's doing her thing. She's making a ton of money. I saw Laapataa Ladies got submitted to the Oscars as India's submission for Best Foreign Film. So that should be interesting to see if it wins. Yes, I loved the movie. Was it Oscar worthy? I leave that up to you guys. I am a little curious. I also saw that Animal had been in the running, but I don't think that would have been a good representation of our cinema. Even though I enjoyed the movie, I don't know that that's necessarily what the Oscars are looking for, because it's kind of like, cheesy, like action and like violence, and doesn't really have a great message. It's not like a heartwarming film. Even like, we like it from like a massy like masala angle, but for outstanding like film, I think Laapataa Ladies was nice because it kind of touched on a lot of social issues, and I think it showcased it in a very like subtle, like not preachy way. So I guess if that moves forward, then we will probably see some of the cast showing up here in LA for the Oscars. So That would be interesting. Did you guys see Vedang Raina's new Calvin Klein ad? Just thought I would throw that out there. Just thought I would mention it because he was looking good. It was a little scandalous, but I liked it. He obviously seemed a little embarrassed, like when he even posted it to his story. So will be very interesting to see Vedang Raina in Jigra. I saw he and Alia and Karan Johar all went on the Kapil Sharma show to promote the film, and there wasn't a lot of attention on him or on Karan Johar. Some people were angry about that. I think it kind of makes sense. Alia is like the big star, so a lot of focus on her. Less so on the periphery of the film. Since the Archies came out, people had thought Vedang Raina was like a complete outsider, and I actually am guilty of that myself. And it does turn out he's a little bit of a secret nepo. His dad is a director, Ayush Raina, but there has been some like blowback or outrage to this, like, oh, we're not talking enough about the fact that he's like a nepo. He doesn't deserve this. He doesn't deserve this as much as anybody else doesn't deserve this, right? The other star kids. And I think it's a false equivalence. I think there's tiers. You know, first of all, I haven't seen anything that his dad has directed. And I doubt any of you have either. Just throwing that out there, not to be mean. He was just like a few films, okay? Nothing noteworthy, nothing anyone would know about. And I'm a Bollywood addict. I didn't hear about any of this. Yeah, of course, I think it helps a little bit. Like, maybe you could meet somebody who could get you an audition, but it's not like some like golden ticket. It doesn't mean you're just set, right? Even like a Shania Kapoor, she is like way more of a top tier nepo, and yet she still can't get debuted because audience just doesn't want her. Film houses aren't really trying to sign her. So for Vedang Raina and, you know, his family background, I would really not say that this is some sort of guarantee. I would actually parallel it a little bit to Vicky Kaushal because his dad is like a stunt director, like an action director. So again, like near the movies in the industry, but not like in some prestigious position where decision makers are going to be like bowing at your feet to cast your sons. Well, Vedang Raina got more attention coming out of the Archies than, you know, Agastya Nanda. How about he's the only hot one? Like I said, check out the Calvin Klein ad, okay? And I've said it before, Archie is very traumatizing, okay? But at least Vedang Raina was like a little bit of eye candy, a little bit of reprieve from everybody else that was on the screen because they just were not doing it for me. They were not bringing it. And you know what? It's not just me saying this. Agastya Nanda said that when he showed up to like the production office or like the shoot building or something like that, actually the people at the building thought that he was like a vendor or something, and they were telling him to like use the back door. Amitabh Bachchan's grandson, and people are telling you to use the service door. You know what? I say good. I feel like some of these nepos maybe need a little bit of a reality check. For Teacup Time today, we are going to recap or review a little bit of Kabhi Kabhie. Don't shut this off if this bores you already, but you know, Prime kept recommending it to me. And so and you know what? This is not a Prime ad, by the way. I feel like I've mentioned the word Prime like 4 times in this episode. It just so happens that's where some of this content is. Switch it up. Let's watch it. I haven't seen it in so long. By the end, and yes, it was like a full 3-hour classic Bollywood film, right? By the end, I was like, whoa, you know, that's not a hot take. And it's a classic Yash Chopra film for a reason. It was very powerful. And so I started to research like the background of the film, and I thought I would share a few fun facts. So just as a recap and for some context, this is a film starring Amitabh Bachchan, Rocky, Shashi Kapoor, Rishi Kapoor, Neetu Kapoor, or Neetu Singh at the time. Powerful cast right there, can't go wrong. And Amitabh, he plays a poet named Amit who falls in love with Rocky's character Pooja, and they can't be together because her family does not support her being in a love marriage. They want to arrange her marriage, and Amit just basically is like, go forth, I don't want you to go against your family. And they're devastated, and she gets married. So she marries Shashi Kapoor's character, Vijay, and then they have a son who's played by Rishi Kapoor. This came from a poet named Sahir Ludhianvi, and he had a book of poems, I guess, in the 40s, maybe the early 40s, and it was called Talkiya, and there was a poem that inspired Yash Chopra in there to create this film. And he actually came up with the idea for this film. He was shooting Dog, the movie Dog, with Rocky, and simultaneously he was shooting Diwar with Amitabh and Shashi Kapoor. So they were top of mind as he was going to cast this, and he's like, I really want them all in this. I want Rishi Kapoor in this. And Shashi Kapoor said, no matter what, I'm going to get Rishi Kapoor to do this movie for you. So that was interesting because I guess Rishi Kapoor was like a little not on board. And if you don't know, Rocky is married to Gulzar, and he had wanted her to retire from acting. I guess she had just gotten married when Yash Chopra was coming up with this idea for the film. But I guess Yash Chopra went and convinced him, like, no, please let her do this film. You know, it's important to me. But could you imagine if she had just like listened and what, like, and so, yeah, this is like the 2024 perspective, but like, why are you guys marrying these superstars, these big actresses, these big names, and then forcing them to quit acting? Just marry a regular girl. Like maybe Shahid Kapoor did it right for him, right? He married a non-film girl so that he can have a housewife and he doesn't have to worry about the competing egos. And so maybe Abhishek Bachchan should have done that too. And same with Rishi Kapoor, okay? And kind of trippy to see Rishi Kapoor and Neetu Singh together in this film, and they're so young. And apparently this is the movie where they fell in love with each other, because I guess Rishi had suggested Tina Munim to play opposite him and tried to like bring her to the set or the screen test, and Yash Chopra had decided on Neetu Singh. It's kind of bittersweet, right? Because it's like beautiful to watch them and you think like, oh wow, and then they fell in love and they have this legacy and this family, and you know, they gave us Ranbir Kapoor. Then it's also very complicated, you know, because we know so much about how their marriage unfolded and how their lives turned out, and it's a little bit complex. It's, you know, and we have this like 40-year perspective, and it's kind of sad, right? Because Neetu Singh was only 15 when she was shooting this movie. She falls in love with this movie star from this famous family who's very handsome, probably extremely charming. And then the marriage, not so happy, not so great. I think it unfortunately took me a little bit out of the film to kind of think about their scenes and be like, oh yeah, it wasn't this great love story. It's actually a little bit tragic, I would say. Also, shout out, can we take a moment of appreciation for the men's fashion of the 70s? Maybe you didn't expect me to say that. Amitabh Bachchan, Shashi Kapoor, Rishi Kapoor, they're wearing their sweaters, they're wearing their coats, they're wearing their like tight pants, bell bottoms, and like, especially Amitabh Bachchan in all his like coats in like the Kashmir, like snowy setting in the forest, and that is an aesthetic that cannot be beat. I would love men to start making mood boards, start making them Pinterest, and put that on there. Okay, get a little fashion inspo as we're moving into fall and winter this year. But I know I'm wishing for the moon. The movie itself, very wholesome, of course, very much with the times. I partially thought like, oh, Amit and Pooja were gonna like break up their families and get together, but that is like, again, very 2024 of me, because that wasn't going to happen. And when I spoke to my mom, I was like, I'm surprised they didn't get together. She's like, they were not going to do that back then in the film. But in a way, you're like rooting for that to happen, because Amit, you know, who's a poet, he's like tortured, and he thinks in his life, like the last 20 years that he's been away from Pooja has been horrible. But then on the other side, you see that she's had a relatively good marriage to Vijay, and she has this happy family. So you're a little bit more mixed about like, well, did she make a mistake or did it end up turning out really well for her? And by the very end, when Shashi Kapoor realizes that Amit and Pooja had been together in the past and been this great love, you kind of, or at least I half expect Shashi Kapoor to like blow up and burn the whole thing down and, you know, maybe even try to kill her or something. And that's just totally not what happened. So I definitely misremembered this from my childhood because, first of all, he was very understanding. He's like, the past is the past. Like, we can't change what happened in the past. He goes a step further and he said, like, I would be such a jackass, basically, to say, like, the last 20 years with this woman who was an amazing wife and mother didn't mean anything. And, like, why would I do that? And that's, like, definition green flag behavior. And you kind of realize, like, okay, life doesn't always turn out the way you planned, but maybe it can turn out just as good or better. And I think on that note, it is a good way to end the recap. You know, this movie was like a roller coaster of emotions, and the music and the poetry, and everyone looks so beautiful and everyone was so good looking. And side note on that, you had to be beautiful back then, okay? They didn't have the braces, they didn't have a Crest white strips, they didn't have the Dyson blowing out your hair. You were hot or you were not. Everybody here was very hot, very aesthetically pleasing film, inspiring me to go back and watch a lot of other old films. This movie, Chef's Kiss, probably my least hot take ever. But hey, sometimes you gotta shout out the classics and you gotta see where the industry's gone right or gone wrong. And I do think some trends from older filmmaking could make its way back, but I also think a lot of it's a lost art, and our attention spans, they just aren't what they used to be. And with that, Teacups, perfect wrap up. Stay tuned for part 2 of the Call Me Bae recap coming out this week. And if you're not checking out the Hot Chai Pod Instagram for conversation and arguments, I think you're missing out. Get thyself over there and enjoy. And until we chat next week, bye.